Welcome back. A new documentary premiered on HBO this week called The Newburgh Sting. Now, it focuses on the FBI investigation and conviction of 4 men from Newburgh, New York for plotting an act of domestic terrorism. But was the sting really a setup, and were the men more guilty of simple greed and idiocy than actual terrorism? Now, I spoke with co-director David Heilbronner about his findings. I remember covering this story at the time, and I remember what seemed to be an endless amount of squad cars, the SWAT teams, the aerial footage, and at the time it was Exhibit A in busting up a terror ring, and no politician within an area code couldn't have fought to get in front of the cameras to talk about how they just busted up an imminent threat at the time. But the more you read into it, I remember at the time, you started to say to yourself, well, wait a second. Wasn't this the gang that couldn't shoot straight? And now you look at it in this film, and I want to play the first clip about what the original intentions of the group were, and then you can give us some context on it. This clip is, again, from some of the participants early on in the process and just how far they were willing to go at that point. Let's play the first clip.
David Williams comes in, and Shahed Hussein says, let's go to the airport at Stewart Air Force Base. So they drive up to the airport and they look at the planes. Stewart Air Force Base is the base that sends Air National Guard and National Guard troops at the time over to Iraq and Afghanistan. And Shahed Hussein says, we should blow up one of these. How do you blow up one of these? Oh, I can get you a missile.
The rocket launcher, not the Stinger. Oh, you got a Stinger? I got a Stinger, not a rocket launcher. Hold on. Stinger. That's the Sonic, right? The Sonic. It's a Sonic, yeah. I mean, in 20 minutes, they won't even know what happened to the plane.
It could be people there. Like, you don't hurt nobody. Somebody could be in that plane cleaning planes or something.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You want to just destroy property. You want to take no lives.
All right, so help us out, give a little context. The informant that we're talking, Mr. Hussein here, he went out of his way to recruit these guys. Give an idea, if you could, for our audience, where he found them and how this quickly began an idea of, all right, let's try and destroy property, into obviously what we saw in that arrest of May 2009.
Sure. I mean, let me set the scene right off the bat, which is this took place in the town of Newburgh, New York, and I don't know how many of your viewers know Newburgh, but it's an impoverished town. Probably 30% unemployment. Most of the houses are boarded up. It's someone once referred to it as Camden, New Jersey on the Hudson. And into this destitute community comes a man who's on the FBI payroll, who's on the lam. He himself is on the lam from committing fraud at a DMV office in Albany. And the FBI says to him, if you can bring us terrorists, we'll pay you. And if you can get convictions, we'll give you a bonus. So this man is Shahed Hussein, and he comes to Newburgh looking for terrorists. And he spends months hanging out at the local mosque, not finding anybody, until one day he crosses the path of the local blowhard, James Cromedy. Cromedy is a low-level marijuana dealer whose only means of employment is he's a night clerk at Walmart. Makes about $14,000 a year. And Cromedy will say anything. Cromedy bragged to Shahed Hussein about blowing up police stations. He bragged to him about committing murders, none of which he did. If the FBI had bothered to check, they would see that the guy is just, he's like Jackie Gleason from The Honeymooners, if that dates me a little bit. But he's a big talker. But Shahed Hussein goes, hey, I've got someone who might actually go along with this. So Hussein pursues Cromedy for months and says, we need more people, we need more bodies, come on, let's get a conspiracy going. Cromedy can't find anybody. And Hussein eventually, when Cromedy just craps out on him, nothing seems to be happening, Hussein says, listen, I can get you $250,000, we can take trips all over the country when this is done, I can get you cars, I can buy you a barbershop. James Cromedy all of a sudden gets really interested and brings in 3 guys from Newburgh.
First of all, 250 grand, usually informants are authorized up to $5,000. So how all of a sudden, he did a multiple of 50 times this, I guess, is part of the question. He said that was code. I never figured that one out throughout the process. But it also turns out that Hussein didn't record everything. So at the end of the day, those blanks in this really have to be filled in by the feds to, in effect, take Hussein's word for it. Let's take a look at another clip.
Hussein knew where the cameras were. Hussein turned on and off the cameras whenever he wanted. There was a camera in his cars. There was a camera in the safe house. When they went out into the street, they knew where the cameras would be. When they went to the warehouses, they knew where the cameras would be. So if he wanted something on television, he recorded it. If he didn't want something on television, he didn't record it.
The jury has to take Shahed Hussein's word for the meeting that Shahed Hussein had with the 4 defendants the night before they all are supposed to carry out this bombing. That meeting, for some reason, was unrecorded. Were they worried that someone was going to express their doubt about this mission? Was Shahed Hussein going to offer them even more money?
So, David, in the end of the day, let's remind everybody, these guys got 25 years. And right. A lot of it, they got to take the word of Hussein over the Newburgh 4, if you will. It's amazing the more you read and the more you learn about it, especially through this film, that crucial piece of information about the night before, nobody knows what actually happened.
Right, well this is a movie that's made by the government. You know, the best thing that happened to us in making the film was that we were able to get all the FBI's undercover tapes, so that you don't have to take somebody's word for what happened on camera. Off camera, there's a lot of argument about it, but even the stuff that's caught on camera is so badly undercuts the government's claim that I think, you know, anyone who sees this film is going to be very disturbed by what went down. So this is what's really disturbing is it's entrapment, and that's bad enough. But what this case really is fraud. That the FBI is creating a PR film using taxpayer dollars to show the world how great they are at busting terrorists. But if you actually look at the film, they're not busting terrorists at all. They're corralling 4 numbskulls with the promise of $250,000 into doing whatever they wanted.
And if I could, and it's to that very point here, and a lot of people ask the question, this was really, forget about the gang who couldn't shoot straight. I mean, we're not talking about rocket scientists, these 4. And this next clip really talks about, you know, whether these guys were incompetent, too incompetent, in fact, to even be terrorists.
The threat of homegrown terrorism is they only need weaponry. They have friends, contacts. They have so many things that would be of tremendous value to members of Al-Qaeda who are constantly looking to recruit.
The idea that there is a terrorist group that would have found criminals so incompetent as these to become terrorists is ridiculous.
The plans were extraordinarily vague. It had something to do with firing a Stinger missile at an airplane, but whether the airplane was going to be in the air or on the ground, or whether there was going to be anybody in it, or even how a Stinger missile was going to work. They're heat-seeking missiles, and if the plane's sitting on the ground and there's no heat coming from it, it wasn't even clear how that aspect of things was going to work.
Those things, they leave a trail of smoke, though, right? Don't say no. They don't.
So I guess the question is begged, Dave, that how couldn't even a first-year law student have gotten these guys off, let alone they all got 25-year terms?
You know, what happened is, this is 2009. It's just a few miles north of where 9/11 went down. They tried the case in Manhattan. And, you know, the government did get these guys to go along with the plot. They did plant what they believed to be bombs in front of a synagogue. And they did, you know, play around with a fake Stinger missile. And so if you're a jury in the post-9/11 era of hysteria, you're going to look at this and go, you know, yeah, they sure look like they're entrapped, but that's a Stinger missile, and this is a synagogue, and they're Muslims, maybe, and I just can't go home and sleep at night if something bad happens. And I think that's what went down here.
David, I really appreciate the few minutes. Again, the Newburgh Sting, I will definitely be watching. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Really appreciate it.
And you should check with HBO for listings, because it will be re-airing throughout this month here. All right, we're going to be right back on RFL. Please stay with us.